If you are an aspiring author who is somewhere along the querying journey seeking representation from a literary agent, then you likely know how confusing and disheartening and frankly just difficult that process can be, and I want to help you navigate it. So in this video, I'm going to offer you some strategic tips for querying that will help you approach it from a more informed and effective standpoint. Now, my information is coming from my experience in the industry. I worked at one of the top-tier literary agencies in New York City that represents a number of best-selling authors, so I do have that insider knowledge that I want to bring you today. If you are wondering when to query, how to query, who to query at a literary agency, then this video is for you because I'm going to touch on all of those topics. Something I feel very strongly about is writers taking a strategic and thoughtful approach to querying and not just sending out your letter to any agent that you find online. Because being really deliberate with who you reach out to, how you reach out to them, when you reach out to them, what you say, how you say it, all of that is going to increase your chances of getting representation and ultimately getting your book published, which is what I want for you. Now, if you are just starting at square one and just wondering how to get a literary agent to begin with, then I recommend checking out my video that goes through what agents look for in writers. That'll really help you determine if you're ready to start querying. But this video is for you if you are really ready to start the querying journey or you have already dipped your toes in and begun querying a little bit. I'm going to help you make sure you are doing it as strategically as possible. If you are interested in book writing or publishing at all, I recommend subscribing to my channel. Every week I either post a video with publishing advice like this one, or videos with tactical writing tips on how to strengthen your manuscript, especially for people working on novels. So let's dive in to the first strategy I want you to use when you're querying, and that is to send queries in batches. I do not recommend sending one query at a time and waiting for an agent to respond before querying another agent, because as you probably know by now, agents take quite a long time to respond to queries, and that is just not going to be efficient for you if you're waiting months and months to hear from an agent before reaching out to the next one. Also know that agents are 100% expecting you to reach out to multiple agents at the same time. So don't feel like you're breaking their trust or going behind their back by reaching out to other agents. It is very, very standard to reach out to a number of agents all at the same time. However, I certainly do not recommend the other strategy and reaching out to 100 agents all at once either, and I'm going to explain why. The ideal batch of queries is somewhere between 8 to 12. And then I recommend taking a break and waiting for responses before doing your next batch of 8 to 12. And that's because you can use those batches as almost experiments, and you're testing the waters to see what kinds of responses you get. For example, if an agent comes back to you and gives you constructive feedback on the first 10 pages that you attach to your query, then that is great feedback because you can incorporate that into your draft, and then you will have a stronger draft for the next agents that you reach out to. So starting with a smaller batch really lets you test the waters and see how your submission package is performing. Then after you have heard back from most, if not all, of the agents in your first batch, then you can send out the second batch. And you might even experiment with that next batch. If, for example, you got all rejections from your first batch, no one requested the manuscript, then maybe you will want to revisit your query letter and your sample pages and see if there's anything you can strengthen in them in order to inspire an agent to want to take the next step with you. Sometimes a refreshed query letter and revisiting those opening pages can really go a long way and make the difference between an agent rejecting you and an agent wanting to move forward. And I have seen it happen, so I recommend taking that approach, and the batch strategy will allow you to iterate on your query letter and sample pages as you go. My second strategy for querying is to query newer agents. As with any industry, you are going to find agents who are at the top of their game and have been doing this for decades, as well as agents who have just entered the industry and maybe only have a few years under their belt. It might be tempting for you to reach out to the most high-profile agents with the most experience who have represented best-selling authors because, of course, you want the best for your book and you want the best for your writing career, so of course you would want the best of the best. However, you should keep in mind that those high-profile agents are likely taking on fewer clients if they're even open to submissions at all, and they might not be. And B, if they are taking on new clients, then they likely aren't going to be super hands-on and may not be able to give you that much time and attention, considering they have a lot of other clients on their plate as well. So a really good idea is to reach out to lower level agents at the same agencies as those high profile agents that you're really drawn to, because then you'll really get the best of both worlds. Those lower level agents are going to have access to those higher profile agents, and they will have the best strategies and they will have learned from them. And yet, because they're younger in their career, because they're hungry to build their list, they're going to be more eager to work with you, they're likely going to be more open to submissions, and they are going to be able to give you more time and hands-on attention. All that said, first and foremost, you need to choose the agent at the agency whose profile most closely aligns with the project that you are working on. Because you can usually only query one agent per agency, it's really, really important that you do choose someone who's the right match. However, if you are going between the really high profile agent and the newer agent and they both seem like a really great match, then I might try leaning toward the newer agent. If you want some more tips on how to actually choose between literary agents, I have a whole video on that, so I will link that above, as well as in the description below. My next strategy for querying is admittedly a little bit sneaky. It is to use an email tracking software. The unfortunate truth is that somewhere along your querying journey, you are likely just going to get ghosted and never hear back from a certain agent. This isn't because they didn't care about your query. It doesn't even mean they didn't read your query or didn't receive it. It means that they were so overwhelmed with submissions that it was impossible for them to get back to every single individual author. Some agents even specify on their websites that they don't necessarily give a response to every person who is querying them. And I read a tweet the other day about an agent who had just that morning opened up to submissions and by the end of the day had received over 100. So there is just so much volume of submissions coming into each agent that sometimes they cannot get back to each person individually, even if they did see your query. So this is when using a sneaky email software might come in handy. You can download a free email plugin. The one that I'm familiar with is Streak, but there are a lot of free ones out there, so just look up whatever would work for you. And what it does is it will track if the agent's email was opened. So if you're using, say Gmail and you have the plugin and you submit the query from your Gmail address, then whenever the recipient opens that email, you will be able to see that they not only received the email, but did open it. Now, a couple of caveats here. These softwares are flawed. So I've learned that if someone opens the email potentially on mobile, or they open it in a specific program or maybe on a web app, then it might not always track it, so you cannot rely on it to always tell you everything accurately. However, it could potentially give you an idea of if an agent has seen your submission or not. Now, a big point here is that just because you potentially see that an agent has opened your email, you should not necessarily follow up with them, even if they didn't send you a rejection or send you a request for a manuscript, because that's just going to look unprofessional and it's not going to rub the agent the right way for you to follow up with them, especially if they have already stated that if they don't respond to you, then you can consider your query rejected. But it will give you some peace of mind knowing that that agent saw it and didn't say anything, and you can probably cross that agent off your list. I feel like the software would also be helpful if an agent has requested your manuscript and you send it to them, but you haven't heard back in some period of time. You can see if they opened your manuscript at least to read it, because sometimes agents can take a while to read manuscripts that they've requested, again, just because their plates are really overloaded. My next strategy for querying relates back to a question I get asked all the time, which is when should you query? My tip here is really just to avoid holiday periods, which is common sense, but I'll be a little bit more specific to the publishing industry. Because your query is already going to go into what we unfortunately call the slush pile in publishing, you want to make sure that you are not increasing your chances of your query getting lost more than it already might, which means you want to avoid querying when everyone else is querying, and you want to avoid querying whenever agents are already going to be overloaded with queries. So to give you a bit of a publishing yearly cycle, the slow season is summer. That can either be a really good time for querying if an agent is online, or it can be a really bad time for querying because agents do take holidays off in the summer because editors at publishing houses are often not really acquiring during summer, so agents are often doing other things. The unofficial reopening of the publishing industry is Labor Day. I recommend actually querying October or November, because if you do it right at Labor Day, Everyone who knows that is going to be reaching out to agents, plus agents are going to be overwhelmed with the submissions they got over summer if they weren't checking their email over summer. So October and November will give you some cushion room for agents to have caught up on their queries and ready to read new ones. The publishing industry will then slow down again from December to January throughout the holiday season, so I wouldn't recommend querying then. I would say February through May is probably a good time to reach them. But keep in mind that agents often manage their own submission timelines, so some agents are only open for submissions during certain months, during certain periods, so definitely check out each agent's individual profile and website to see if they only accept submissions at a specific time. My last tip for querying from a strategic approach is a very, very essential one, and it is to keep a spreadsheet or a tracker of some kind. It is absolutely essential for you to keep a list of all of the agents that you have reached out to, as well as the status of your submission, whether it is still pending, whether they have rejected you, or whether they have requested a manuscript, or potentially if they have requested you to revise your manuscript and then resubmit it to them later. If you're wondering about what any of those responses means and looks like, I recommend checking out my video where I go through all of the different literary agent responses and what you should do in each case. But keeping this tracker will ensure that you don't double query literary agents that you have already reached out to, because that is a big no-no. And it will, more importantly, give you the opportunity to follow up with agents who are still in the pending category when another agent requests a manuscript or offers you representation. Because what you can do in that case is go back to all of the agents who you are still waiting to hear from and say, another agent wants to read the full manuscript, would you like it too? Or you can say, another agent offered me representation, just wanted to give you the heads up. And that can sometimes spur the agent to look at your submission quicker because they know another agent is interested, and it just makes, a bit of competitive energy. So I hope this video has shown you that querying is a marathon, not a sprint, and I hope I have given you some strategic tactics to help you run the whole thing. I ultimately want you to feel more confident going into the process and really understand the industry and strategize your way to success. Let me know in the comments where you're at in the querying journey, as well as any obstacles that you've faced. I'd love to know what's going on with you and what other advice I can give you to help you navigate this process. And if you have a working query letter, I recommend checking out my video on common query letter mistakes, because if you have any of those, it can be a really good idea to revisit that query letter so it's even stronger for your next batch of queries. As always, if you found this video helpful, please hit that like button and subscribe to my channel. It means a lot to me and helps me bring you more and more content every single week. Thanks so much for watching, and happy writing.